Welcome, football fans, to Saturday Showdown, the ultimate touchdown for your college football fix. Each week, we'll dive into the hottest games, standout players, and pivotal moments that define the season. Whether you're a diehard fan or just tuning in for the first time, we got all the stats, stories, and insights to keep you at the top of your game. So grab your favorite snack and get comfy. It's time to kick off another episode of Saturday Showdown.
Welcome back, college football fans. We are back to talk week 4. And week 4 started out on Thursday night with an exciting game between Nebraska and Illinois. Two ranked teams near the bottom of the top 25, with Illinois being 24, Nebraska being 22, and you know them bringing along Mini Mahomes, aka Dylan Raiola. And this is a game that went into overtime. Initially 31-24, Illinois gets the win here. Initial thoughts on this game that got us kicked off for week 4 on that night.
I'm noticing a pattern. Okay. 1, I'm terrible at picking college football games. And 2, I do a lot of apologizing. So, I'm pretty sure I said that, Nebraska was going to get the win, like, convincingly. I said it was going to be a close game, but I just thought that Nebraska was going to dominate overall. I wholeheartedly apologize to all the Illinois fans because that was not the case. It was a dogfight back and forth between both teams. I mean, a severe dogfight. I mean, just when you thought that one team had the edge, the other team shot that down and came right back. So there was a lot of times that I feel like Illinois was down and they were losing momentum, and they didn't let that phase them at all. And they just kept pace with Nebraska, like it was nothing. And, when it came down to it, they made the bigger plays, especially in overtime. I think they sacked Raiola like 3 times on that last drive in overtime. And, like the last play, they ended up sacking him on the last play, but it was like a 4th and like 30 something, for their last drive in overtime. So, credit to Illinois. They played really well. They are a lot tougher than what I thought. I'm not even going to lie to you. The defense played. I know they allowed, 31 points or whatever, but the defense played flawlessly toward the end. The offense played flawlessly. There were mistakes made on both sides of the ball, but they never let that get them down. And they 100% deserved to win that game. I mean, I thought they, took advantage of every opportunity they needed, and they just made the bigger plays when it came down to it. And sometimes that's all you need in games like that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you look at it, Luke Altmaier for Illinois had just an amazing game. Completes 21 out of 27 passes, 215 yards and 4 touchdowns. He only misfires on 6 passes and has a clean game, no turnovers. I mean, it's like we've talked about every week. That turnover battle, whoever can win that turnover battle is going to have the margin to win the game. And when it comes down to it, Raiola, he had a good game himself, 24 of 35, 297 passing, 3 touchdowns, but 1 interception. And like you mentioned, that those pressures, Illinois on the day had a total of 5 sacks. So that defense was getting after it. And, Illinois is one of those teams that I always feel like is a little bit of a sleeper team. You never really talk about them or expect them, and then here you are, you see them 4-0 ranked, was in the top 25 and 1-0 in conference play.
Yeah, they. Like I said, they made, in close games like that, it just comes down to who wants it more. I mean, that's really what it kind of comes down to. And I'm not saying Nebraska and Raiola that they didn't want it, but Illinois just wanted it more. I mean, like I said, if you guys go back and watch that last drive in overtime after Altmaier threw that touchdown to make his 4th passing touchdown of the day, I'm pretty sure that last drive for Nebraska was atrocious. He got sacked on the first play of the drive, I think. They had a couple penalties that pushed him back, and then the very last play, he was sacked again. So, to end it all. So, I mean, Illinois just wanted it more, and their defense in overtime came up hugely. They caused Nebraska to make a lot of mistakes, and they brought I mean, they brought a lot of pressure. Credit to the defensive coordinator because he could smell the blood in the water on that last overtime drive, and he literally blitzed every play. I mean, he brought someone every play on that last drive. So, again, credit to Illinois because they played, like I said, I understand you want to work on cutting down the points, but I thought they played flawlessly overall. I mean, they got after Iowa all day long. I mean, they were they made him have to be on his heels all game. And whenever you start making quarterbacks a little uncomfortable like that, they make mistakes. Like you saw, he had the interception. So, that's really all you need sometimes is just to get after him and make them feel uncomfortable. And that's what they did. So credit to Illinois for being able to do that, not just for a single part of the game, but all game long. They were on Nebraska's heels. So.
Yeah, like you say, congratulations to Illinois there. Former ex-Razorbacks coach Brett Bielema leading them to a 4-0 season so far with that in the top 25. So we'll see what they do in the rest of Big Ten play. As we kind of move on, Texas takes care of UL Monroe like we thought they would, 51-3. I mean, it is what it is. It was Texas versus UL Monroe. Arch Manning, 258 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have 2 picks in this game. Under his first start, they were kind of led by their running back Blue, 25 carries, 124 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you got to lean on certain people, but I will say Archie Manning played. He did play well. I will give him that, but it was, I would say he left a lot on the table. I feel like it was a little bit disappointing of a performance. I mean, I said they were going to put up 50 points. I said they're going to put up 50 on these guys. I think it was pretty obvious. I mean, Texas is on fire. So when you're playing a team like that, I hate to say it like this, but you can afford to make those mistakes whenever you play a team like that. So hopefully this is a learning experience for Archie because I would say it's 50-50. He probably starts the next game as well. But I will tell you, if he does this in the next game, whenever they play their game against Georgia, and if Quinn is able to play, Quinn's going to play because you can't be throwing interceptions like this against in a big time game. You can't be someone you're going to put up 50 against. That's fine. Because obviously the interceptions did not matter. They scored 3 points all game long, so the interceptions it was almost non-existent. But if you do that against a Georgia team, you're going to lose that football game. I will 100% promise you. If you throw 2 interceptions against them, you're losing. Because more than likely, with how good of a football team Georgia is, they're going to score off of one of those turnovers. Maybe not both, because Texas is a good football team, but they probably will score off of at least one. So I'm glad that he got the start. I'm glad he got in there and shook off some rust. But if he wants to continue being that starting quarterback and showing what he's got, he needs to clean up that part of his game because doing that against a team that's not anywhere near your ability as a team, that's not a good sign. But I guess I'd rather have him do it in a game like this than a big time game. So,
yeah, that's true. That kind of was leading into my next question there. Coming up this week, they open up conference play with Mississippi State. Do you think Texas goes about being a little bit careful with Quinn Ewers, letting him sit one more game? With it being Mississippi State, we talked about last week how they just got rolled by Toledo at home. Is this you roll Arch Manning one more game, give Quinn Ewers some, another game of rest in a game that similar to UL Monroe, it is SEC play, but another game that you should take care of business and win?
Yeah, I think I would. I think I'd be comfortable starting Archie. Listen, it was his first starting. I'm sure he was probably a little nervous, right? I know it's his job to know the offense, but let's be honest. There's probably some stuff he's not comfortable with. I mean, he's not out there taking first team reps all game long like Quinn is. So I get the little bit of a rust. He made some mistakes, but after he made those mistakes, he looked better. He made a lot of good decisions. He made a lot of good throws. He's able to use his feet. I would say, yeah, I would feel comfortable starting him because I think Quinn's going to need that rest because when he does start against Georgia, he's going to get banged up in that game. That's going to be a very physical football game. And I think I'd rather have you, even if it's 1% more healthier, like I would rather have you be, 98% healthy than 97% healthy. I whatever little extra rest I can afford you before I know you're going to go into a game where you're probably going to get hit a couple times, I think I would want that. And I don't see any reason why. I don't see Texas going in and struggling. I think Archie Manning is definitely more than capable enough to win this football game. So,
yeah, I agree. Fair. Next up, you had your Ohio State Buckeyes taking care of business against Marshall, 49-14. Will Howard has decent day, 100 or 275, 2 touchdowns. Quinshon Judkins comes out, has a day, 173 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, this is another one of those. This is what was expected. Come out and take care of business and take care of a Marshall team that you should.
Yeah, listen, I'm not going to sit here and brag on them because we've played nothing but nobody so far. But we have outscored our opponents 137 points, added together. So this offense is incredible. I was a little worried about Will Howard. In that first game, you could kind of see him trying to adjust to a different type of offensive style and obviously a bigger spotlight. It seems he's adjusting really well. Judkins, that guy, I would say that the backfield is his. But what makes it so powerful is anytime you hear anyone talk about it, on ESPN or College Game Day or whatever, they keep talking about it's not just Will Howard. We have a two-headed monster in that backfield. And for a lot of teams, I think that's going to be a hard issue to stop because usually, I'm not saying most teams' second-string running backs aren't good, but whenever you have 2 starters on any team anywhere else, either one of these guys could go anywhere else and be the starting running back. Without question. The fact that one guy goes to the sideline and then basically you have a starter come and take his spot and go right in with a fresh set of legs, that's hard for a lot of teams to stop. Usually you can stop that second stringer a couple times because he's not as well prepared as, your number one guy, but now you have 2 number one guys. So, yeah, we came in there and took care of business. I'm not going to boast on them too much. It was expected for anyone. So it's not really an impressive win. I'll be anxious to see what happens whenever we face someone that actually has some sort of talent, just a little bit of talent. So,
yeah. It's like they brought in Judkins and then they get the extra gift of Travion Henderson deciding to return to school and not go and declare for the draft. And, where he probably would have been a decent pick, whether it be, running backs don't typically go high, but, one of those mid-round high for a running back picks, if you will. So, going down through here, Ole Miss takes care of business, 52-13 over Georgia Southern. Jackson Dart has another day, 382 yards, 4 touchdowns. Again, it's like you said with, a lot of these other teams talk about, they're still not really playing anybody, so they're still going to have these kind of absurd, crazy stats. The big game to talk about this week of ranked teams, Tennessee going into Oklahoma, getting the win, taking care of business, 25-15. Not as high scoring, so props to Oklahoma and their defense for taking care of business and getting things done there. So good game plan by Brent Venerables, but you look at the stats for Nico, only 194 yards, 1 touchdown. They were led mainly by the running game in this game. Dylan Sampson, 92 yards and a touchdown on 24 carries. Is there anything in particular you think that stuck out to you on this game, or is it just, are you feeling more confident with Tennessee after an SEC win like this, after seeing, they put up, 50, 60, 70 points in their first 3 games of the season?
No, yeah, Tennessee's good. This is their first real test, I feel like. So, but still, I don't think Oklahoma is up to par with Tennessee. Tennessee's a really fast team. Like, they have a lot of speed, just a lot of speed overall. So it was a little, I won't say concerning by any means, but it was a little unusual to see Nico, is that his first name, right? Lama Leva. It was a little concerning to see him not, do what he usually has been doing against these other teams. But, it was the hardest team they faced up to date. And Oklahoma doesn't have a terrible defense. So I was surprised that Oklahoma, was able to keep Tennessee under control a little bit, because Tennessee's a fast team. Whenever they start breaking away, it's hard to stop them. To only lose by 10 points, it's not bad, especially to, the number 5 ranked team in the country. So I give Oklahoma credit. They didn't play so bad either. Hawkins, 11, 18, 132 yards and a touchdown. I'd say the big thing for them is they had no run game. Oklahoma had 0 run game. Their quarterback, again, I remember saying it when we talked about it. your quarterback cannot be your leading rusher. That cannot happen. And he was again today, 12 carries, 22 yards. I want to put this in perspective. He led in carries, right? He led in carries and yards. And the next closest running back to him with carries had 8. So, he had 4 more carries than their next running back, and, this was their quarterback who was in there. Usually it's Arnold, I believe, who's the starter. I'm not really sure what happened. I don't know if he got hurt or not. He went 7 of 16 for 54 yards and an interception. So I'm not really sure what happened there.
I think it was almost in the sense of benching because along with that, pick he had, he also fumbled the ball twice and lost it twice. This was a game of not great quarterback play because if you look at Nico as well, he fumbled the ball twice and lost it twice as well. So, this was a game that was almost seemed to be dominated by the run game by Tennessee and lack thereof by Oklahoma.
Yeah. So it was a good game. It was interesting. I don't think it had I don't think it was as fun, I guess, as people were expecting it to be. I kind of think people were expecting it to be like a blowout. I thought, Tennessee was going to go on there and put up another 50 points on them. But credit to Tennessee for playing tougher football than what I thought they were capable of as of right now. I'm not saying they're not a great team, but compared to Tennessee, I think Tennessee has like the way better overall talent. So it was a good game overall. But credit to Tennessee for even having the turnovers, overcoming those, and getting the win in Oklahoma. So
yeah, 100%. Moving on, the game that most intrigued me, Missouri barely winning in double overtime over Vanderbilt. I don't want to say it, but I mean, little overrated there maybe. Not saying Missouri's not a good team, but I think they showed right here they're not a top 10 team right now. And, you have a Vanderbilt team. Yes, they're not normal Vanderbilt where they're just absolutely terrible. But they're still Vanderbilt. They're still building. First-year head coach Clark Lee there. He comes in and takes this Vanderbilt team to double overtime. And, you almost force triple overtime if your kicker doesn't miss the field goal in that second overtime to push it to the third overtime. So, I mean, your thoughts on this Missouri team, are you still think they're the real deal, or do you think this kind of shows some concerns you might have for this team?
I mean, it was a little concerning. I think it'd be a lie if I said it wasn't, right? But, I mean, we've also seen – I can't lie, right? Because I said Georgia was concerning because they almost lost Kentucky. So I can't, I cannot not say the same thing here. So yes, it was a little concerning. But what concerned me the most was actually, which was surprising to me, is I wasn't really concerned about the offense whatsoever. The defense was horrendous. I mean, they were terrible. Missouri's offense, your guys' quarterback, Cook, 23 of 37, 226, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Your guys' running back, Noel, 24 carries, let's just say 200 yards, averaged 9.3 yards a carry. So, the offense was absolutely cooking. I mean, they were cooking. But the defense just got absolutely cooked on by Pavia. I mean, he literally was the definition of a dual threat quarterback, and he was laying it on. I don't think Mizzou was ready for him to use his legs the way that he did, because it seemed like right when you thought that Mizzou had him, he'd use his legs every time and get out of it. He went 14 of 23, 178 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, but he also carried the ball 17 times for 84 yards. He was averaging about 5 yards a carry. The quarterback was. So credit to him because he played a phenomenal game. That Pavia. He blew me out of the water watching them play. So, I don't know what would have happened if the kicker didn't absolutely shank the ball completely about 20 yards to the left. But I think Mizzou, they possibly could have been in trouble if it would have went in a couple more overtimes.
Because you think about it, the start of that third overtime is when it's you go for extra points every time going forward. So
I'm not really sure what would have happened. But it is a little concerning because their defense if their defense plays like that against an Alabama or a Georgia or an Ole Miss or a Texas or any ranked opponent that they face, if their defense plays like that, they're going to get absolutely pummeled. I mean, they are. I mean, you guys almost lost with your quarterback, throwing up 2 touchdowns and your running back running for 200 yards, and you guys almost lost to a Vanderbilt. So if you guys do that against any ranked team that has significantly more talent than Vanderbilt, it is not going to end up well for Mizzou or Mizzou fans. I mean, that's going to be brutal. So I don't want to say that you're right. I still think, I don't know if they're a top. I don't know if they're a top 10 team. I think they're ranked. In the AP polls, they dropped to 11th. So that's probably where they're going to end up being out of the top 10. But to answer your question, it was very concerning to see them struggle, because I know their schedule doesn't really necessarily get easier. So, that defense got to get kicked up, because if they do this, it's not going to be good rest of the season.
Yeah, not at all. You go into a game against an Alabama like that, they're going to shred you to pieces. So, final game we talk about here from week 4. You probably hate to see it. Michigan beats USC. Out of nowhere, they come in and beat USC 27-24 at home. Miller Moss has a decent day, 283 yards, 3 touchdowns. But I think the story of this game was the run game for Michigan. They clearly figured out that they can't pass the ball. Their quarterback, Orgy, that started 32 passing yards the entire game. That was it.
That's what I'm saying. saying.
they leaned on heavy on the run game here. Still, Edwards getting outshined. Kalel Mullings, 17 carries, 159 yards, 2 touchdowns. Edwards wasn't left out, though. He still had 14 carries, 74 yards for a touchdown. But, your 3 touchdowns on the ground there, and then your quarterback adds 43 rushing yards as well. So, it seems like this is just the season of quarterbacks nearly being leading rushers on their team. So,
very upsetting. This is. I don't know. Listen, I don't know. I'm just going to blame Lincoln Riley right now, because I couldn't even tell you who the defensive coordinator at USC is. So I'm just going to blame Lincoln Riley. That man should be fired. That man should be fired. Whoever the defensive coordinator is should absolutely not be there anymore. They literally could not throw the ball whatsoever, and you knew they couldn't throw it. It wasn't like a surprise, right? Their longest pass play all game was like a 12-yard pass, like in the fourth quarter. Like that was the longest pass play of the game, right? So all game long, you knew they could not throw the ball, and you just let them run right through you. You did nothing. Like, you did nothing to stop the run whatsoever. You didn't completely load the box every time. You just played a regular type of defense. And you knew they were going to run it. You knew they were literally going to run the ball. That's all they did. Could not throw the ball. Even if Alex Orgy, whatever his name is, if you put a barn in front of him, he couldn't hit it. So, that was – I honestly couldn't believe what I was watching, because they were up 17-0, 14-0 at one point in time. So, I couldn't believe what I was watching. And then USC wants to start making a comeback, and then they finally take the lead. And then what does Michigan do? They run the ball again. They just run it down your throat, and there's nothing that you still continue to do nothing. So USC deserved to lose that. They're terrible. I hope they fall out of the rankings. I think I might hate them almost as much as Michigan now, because they ruined my whole Saturday for me. It could have been another easy win. But it just further proves my point, right? And I'm not saying this because I'm just an Ohio State fan. Michigan is horrendous. They are terrible. This is not a good football team. I promise you right now, if they tried doing this against any big team, right? Any big team, you do this against a Georgia or a Texas or an Ohio State or an Oregon or anybody, you're going to get blown out of the water. Running the ball can only work so many times. And when you go up against one who actually has some sort of a defense and knows what you're going to do, you're not going to win this game. He threw for 32 yards all game. That's atrocious. I understand Michigan got the win, but Sherman Moore, whatever his name is, he has to be sweating a little bit, knowing that at some point in time, like they're going to have to throw the ball. And Alex Orji did not look like he could throw the ball if his life depended on it. So, you threw the ball 12 times, and only got 32 yards out of 12 throws. You got 32 yards out of it. So I don't know. What are your thoughts? Tell me what did you make of this game?
I mean, you look at it. This is typical Lincoln Riley team. Has a great offense, no defense whatsoever, and that's what's going to get him in trouble, or like you said, fired. I mean, you saw what he did at Oklahoma. That was the story at Oklahoma. He had these high-powered attack offenses, and just won shootout games. There's no defense. It was, we're just going to beat you by scoring more points than you. Well, now you're playing in a Big Ten team conference against a team like Michigan that, yes, their offense is terrible, but if they still have it's a Big Ten defense. You're able to put up 24 points. They have a quarterback situation and in a non-existent passing game. They're going to rely on the run. You don't load the box and force them to beat you throwing the ball. Their leading receiver, Michigan's leading receiver, had one catch for 10 yards. Your leading receiver. So, yeah, I think this is just I'm with you. If you're Lincoln Riley and you're looking at this, like, you had this game, you had the chance to go up 1-0 your first season in the Big Ten, and you squander it because you don't load the box and actually make an attempt to have a defense.
Let me ask you a question. If you're Sherman Moore, right, even though you just got the win over the number, I guess there were 11 at the time, 11 USC at the time, how are you feeling going into the rest of the season? I understand you got a big win, right? But knowing the situation that you have zero pass game, that your guy that I feel like a blind man could probably throw for more yards in a football game right now than Alex Orji could. So how do you feel knowing that you go up against Minnesota, and you go up against Washington, then you go up against Illinois, then you have your rivalry game against Michigan State, then you play Oregon, Indiana, Northwestern, and then you finish the year in Ohio State. So it's not the easiest schedule, right? I mean, I feel like almost every team you got to kind of be worried about because these are the same guys that almost lost to Arkansas State, got blown out by Texas, and barely beat Fresno State. So if you're Sherman Moore, how are you feeling now, even though you got a big win going into the rest of your season? How concerned are you about your offense right now?
I'm very concerned, and I'm tempted to have open quarterback tryouts for the rest of the season because we've clearly seen the two guys that they've kind of wanted to lean on this season hasn't got the job done. Sure, you got the run threat from Orji, but you're not going to lock out and win very many games when you have a total of 32 passing yards because better teams are going to learn from this game and be like, all right, I'm loading the box. You're going to have to beat us passing the ball. And Minnesota next week, that's not going to be any easy feat. No, Minnesota's going to come prepared. They're going to watch this game tape and be like, okay, the quarterback can't throw the ball. We're sticking, 6, 7, 8 guys in the box and forcing them to beat us through the air and see what happens.
Yeah, and in a 3-game stretch, right, you got to play Illinois, Michigan State, and Oregon in 3 games. Those are 3 tough games. And usually, the Michigan State's not a tough game. But, given the circumstances of your offense right now, if you don't get something figured out, that could be a worrisome game right now. So, yeah, I don't know. I hate Michigan, but I feel like they're not in a good situation right now. I'm happy for them. I'm glad they got the win. Kudos to them for literally just destroying Lincoln Riley's team, even though he knew what they were going to do. He literally knew they were just going to run the ball, and you still won anyways. So I can't do anything but give credit to Michigan for winning, even though the other team knew your whole offense. They knew exactly what you were going to do, and you still came out with the win. So credit to them on that. But if I'm Sherman Moore, I'm definitely worried.
100%. So I just was curious here taking a look at their roster to see what maybe other options they have as far as quarterback play. You've got a freshman in Jaden Davis, 6'1", 205. You got a junior, Jaden Denagel, 6'5", 235. And, of course, Alex Orji. You've got Jack Tuttle, a graduate, 6'4", 211. Anthony Arnu, a senior, 6'2", 234. Not sure how many of these guys are actually walk-ons. And then, of course, David Swarren that got benched for Orji. So, I mean,
I think you do.
What do you have to lose to run one of these other guys out there and see what they can do?
I think you do what they said. I exactly what you said. I think that's what I would do if I was Sherman Moore. I think all week in practice, all week long, all the way up until Friday, it's anyone's spot. Anyone who is listed as a QB on my roster can be the starter. And I think you just have an open competition all week long. Because the whole 32 passing yards, that's not going to work. You're not going to win games like that. You might be able to pull one over Minnesota, right? You might be able to pull one over them because you can bully them around or whatever. But there's going to come a point in your season where you still got to face Illinois, Oregon, and Ohio State. And I'm telling you, there's going to be 3 losses if you can't throw the ball. I will bet any amount of money that you're going to take 3 L's if you do not learn how to throw the football. So I agree with you. I think that's one thing you can do all week long, Monday through Friday. You open competition. If you're listed as a QB, it's first team reps for everybody, and then we're seeing who comes out. We're seeing who has the best practice.
I was about to say, yeah. I mean, that's all you can do. I feel like it's hard for any of those other guys. Like you got to think they're a college quarterback for a reason, and you got to feel like they can at least somehow get more than 32 yards in a passing game. So, I'll be interested to see going into Saturday if Orji's the starter again. Do they go back to Warren, or is it one of these other guys we just talked about? That's going to be, I think, something I'm wanting to watch for because that honestly could, like you said, determine part of the rest of their season. Yes, they're 3-1 right now somehow, but they're about to get into the heart of that schedule, and it's not going to be easy by any means, and it could go downhill really fast for the defending champs. So, other quick games to hit from week 4 before we move on and talk week 5. Utah gets the win over Oklahoma State on the road, 22-19. They were actually led by Isaiah Wilson, not Cam Rising in this game. And he led the Utes to a win on the road. I think we'll see this matchup again, potentially for the Big 12 championship game. Wouldn't be surprising there. Any quick thoughts on that game?
No, it was good. It was a good football game overall. So, I was surprised that they got the win even without Cam Rising. I was surprised by it, but kudos to Utah for pulling it off. That's a game that we both picked Utah to win. So credit for being down one of your main guys and pulling one over on Oklahoma State. So,
and staying in the Big 12, Kansas State gets absolutely smacked on the road by BYU, 38-9. An unranked BYU team over a 13th ranked Kansas, where, BYU's making a case for why they came over to the Big 12. It is Kansas State. They've got a lot more other Big 12 games to go. But, you're sitting at 4-0 and 1-0 in the Big 12 and going into week 5. You're feeling pretty good if you're BYU.
Yeah, BYU hasn't been good since Zach Wilson was the quarterback there, and Zach Wilson obviously is one of the worst NFL QBs I've ever witnessed played football. I think I might be able to throw a football farther than him. But I'm saying I'm going to call it right now. Okay, I'm calling it right now. If you guys haven't seen it, go look. I don't know if you've seen it. Go look at what is probably going to be the play of the year, play of the year in college football. Go look at BYU's kick returner. Go look at his punt return. It looked like he lost visual of the ball. He found it whenever it hit the ground. It took 2 bounces. On the last bounce, he picked it up, and he was facing the opposing end zone, right? He was facing his own end zone on the complete left side. and he made a complete U-turn all the way. I guess he's on the right side of the field. So made a complete U-turn all the way to the left side of the field, all the way down for a touchdown. I mean, it was – and that kid, he wasn't a very tall kid at all. He was definitely a shorter kid, but he had some wheels on him, and he was just moving. So that honestly might be play of the year in all college football because that was absolutely crazy. So credit to BYU. I mean, I watched a little bit of the game before I went to work, and I listened to the rest of it on the way to work, and I thought they played phenomenal. So, like you said, they're really showing people, that they can play football.
100%. Yeah. Shout out Mr. Primetime 13 here. How's it going? He said 137 total yards on that play.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it was crazy. I haven't seen anything like that in a long, long time. So if you guys haven't seen it, go watch that because that was awesome. It was awesome.
Yeah, and then you got Aaron Blue Shirts banner here. How about the Miami boys? Miami getting the job done against South Florida, winning 50-15. 4-0 start, 2-0 in conference, number 8 ranked last week. Cam Ward comes out and shows out again, 404 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. Miami's got it rolling, and I think now is the favorite, in my opinion, to win the ACC.
Yeah, Miami looks good. They're a fast team. They're high flying. They're rolling. They're feeling good. And Cam Ward I'm telling you guys right now, Cam Ward is a problem. He's a problem for a lot of people right now. So the man is going out there, and he is literally just handing it to people, right? He's making a little bit of mistakes every now and then, but I will take my quarterback throwing an interception if you're going to go ahead and throw me three touchdowns and throw me 404 yards. I think I'll let you make that one mistake. So he's a problem, man. He's definitely got his name up there for the Heisman, 100%. So I mean, he's playing really good football. Miami's playing really good football.
Yeah, and not to mention, their running back Jordan Lyle just casually adds in another 104 yards and a touchdown as well. So I mean,
on 6 carries.
Yeah, 6 carries. That's insane. So Miami's looking pretty good. Question here, we kind of hit on this earlier before we move on to week 5. Aaron Blue Shirts Banter asks, do you start Arch against UGA? We kind of hit on this a little bit earlier. You've got Mississippi State. You've got a few games in between when they take on Georgia. I think that's a tough one because you've got experience versus talent. Not saying Quinn Ewers isn't talented. I think Arch does get the start this week against Mississippi State. But I've also heard, I don't know how official it is, that it's been said apparently from the Manning family that once Ewers is healthy, the plan is for Arch to take a step back and remain out of the spotlight as much as possible. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but that's just from what I've heard was that as soon as Ewers is healthy, Arch is going to take a step back. It's Quinn's role. And so honestly, I think even if Arch does come out well against Mississippi State, I still think you got to go with your experienced guy again with Quinn Ewers against a Georgia team where you're going to need a guy that's been there in those big moments, especially with, what could be a 1 versus 2 matchup. I mean, what do you think, Dylan?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I agree with Caleb. I think Archie's going to get the start this week. I don't see why you wouldn't unless you are just super concerned that he's just not it right now and Quinn is 100% healthy. But I don't see why you would take a chance if Quinn's going to start, right? Why you would take a chance and get him hurt in a game that you're probably going to go out there and probably at least put another 40 points on Mississippi State. So I think Archie's more than capable enough because I think if you put him on a lot of teams, right, he's probably the starter for a lot of teams right now. I don't see why you would put Quinn in the situation to get hurt, but I don't think you start. I mean, I don't think you start Arch against Georgia. Quinn. Not only do I not think he's as ready as Quinn right now, right? I don't think he is as ready as Quinn right now. But at the same time, like Quinn earned there's not really a lot of quarterbacks you can say they earned that spot, right? Quinn earned that spot. Like that kid can play football. Like he's gonna be a top 10 pick whenever he goes to the draft. I mean, the kid, he definitely has so much talent. It's unbelievable. So I would say no, I wouldn't start Arch, but at the same time, if you come to that game and Quinn's like, dude, I'm hurt. Like, I'm hurt.
It's like he gets beat up again in one of the games before. Like he gets re-injures whatever oblique type injury that he had.
So
you might not have a choice. So
yeah, unless he can't play football, I wouldn't start Arch against Georgia. Unless Quinn cannot play, like physically cannot get out there, I would not start Archie. I would start Quinn.
Yeah, agreed. All right, now it's a fun time to jump over to our picks this week, week 5. Like we just mentioned, you look at our group. It's been a rough year so far. I'm sitting at 2,500, three-way tie for first place. We've got Dylan sitting at 19 and 21 and a three-way tie for fourth. We both had hot starts there, but we've kind of leveled off here in our picks. So, I mean, I don't think there's any type of strategy you can come up with for this. It seems like when we go one team that let us down, they bounce back the next week or whatever it may be. But we'll jump into game 1 here. You have Oklahoma State and Kansas State, both teams coming off of a loss and 0-1 in conference play.
It's a hard one. That's a hard game.
It is a hard one. I mean, it's at Kansas State, Bill Snyder Stadium in Manhattan. Kansas State's favored by 6, over under a 55.5. You look at Kansas State's quarterback on the season, Johnson, 620 passing yards, 6 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Alan Bowman on the other side, the 7-year vet that we've talked about before. 1,173 passing yards, 10 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. So you've got a young starter for Kansas State versus an experienced vet for Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State hasn't let me down yet. The times that I had picked them, I didn't pick them last week. I picked them to lose last week, and they did. So they haven't let me down there. And I picked them the week before that to win. They didn't let me down there. So I'm going to take Oklahoma. I'm not saying that Kansas State can't win this game, but I'll take the vet. He's been obviously he's played college football for about 100 years. So he knows, whenever you lose, he's able to rebound. He understands what it's like to take a loss and rebound from like that. Kansas State's young QB, they just got absolutely embarrassed by BYU, who was unranked. And when I say embarrassed, they got outplayed on every level of that field. Sometimes I think that is a little harder to come back from. Not saying, he's not, because their quarterback is a good QB, but sometimes mentally that can wear on you whenever you were doing everything you possibly could and nothing was going right. So I think that might wear on this kid just a little bit coming into this game. I think it's probably a 1-score game, but give me Oklahoma State for the win.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I take Oklahoma State to bounce back, behind an experienced Alan Bowman and an offensive line that's very experienced, all redshirt seniors, guys that have played together for several years. Maybe Kansas State can figure it out, figure out a way to bounce back from, like you said, getting dog walked by BYU. But like you said, until now, I'm going with experience in Oklahoma State. Moving on next up with a team we just talked about. You got BYU headed down to Waco, 4-0, 1-0 in conference play to take on a 2-2 Baylor team that lost an overtime game to Colorado, beat Air Force, and lost to that same Utah team that just beat Oklahoma State. Baylor's a 3.5-point favorite in this game. Probably the home field advantage favorite there, just because it's at home. Over under 45.5. This one's easy for me. I'm taking BYU in this one.
Yeah, you just made me sick to my stomach. Oh my God, they're favorites. They are. Yeah, give me BYU. Listen, not only did you guys lose Colorado, which that's not necessarily embarrassing, but the fact that you guys were literally in the end zone, right, to tie the game up to go into another overtime, and all you had to do was just hold on to the ball for about 1 second, right, literally till it crossed, that painted white line. You got to get the ball across, and you fumbled it in the end zone, right? in overtime, biggest carry of your life, and you fumble in the end zone, right? I'm never picking you to win a football game. There's zero chance because there was a real chance that Colorado could have lost that game because that offensive line was horrendous and Baylor was getting after Shadur Sanders all game long. And I think if they could have forced him into another overtime, that could have been game. But I can't see myself picking a team that makes mistakes like that. I mean, when you're literally inches from the end zone, and instead of just jumping in, you want to try to. It almost looked like he was trying to challenge himself and try to lower his shoulder against Colorado's linebacker, and instead he whiffed. Ball hit the shoulder pad, and he fumbled the ball in the end zone. So. I don't know if you watched that game, but that's literally what happened. All he had to do was just jump over the guy, and instead he went right at him, and the ball hit the shoulder pad. He had to be every bit of 4 inches from the end zone, and he fumbled the ball in the end zone. So,
yeah, I mean, that's another one of those things where even though Colorado itself may not be sharing the same success. They got the win, but as a whole, they've had some struggles this year. But like Aaron Blueshirt's banner here says, Travis Hunter is him. He is definitely top. I hate to say anything. I would be comfortable saying I wouldn't be surprised to see him number 1 pick in this upcoming draft. Top 5 for sure.
Yeah, if he's not a top 3 pick, NFL teams do not know how to draft anybody because this kid is. I don't even know how to explain it. The kid he's chock full of talent. Everything he does is spectacular.
The fact that he's playing both sides of the ball in college should tell you something right there. And succeeding, like usually if you have 2 players or a player that plays 2 positions, usually they're going to be better at one side than the other and kind of gravitate towards it in college. That's what you you lean towards and build into that side that you're having more success on. I honestly don't know which side of the ball would you rather play him on? He's basically a receiver on both sides of the ball where he's just catching passes from the opposing quarterback.
The kid is incredible because you don't even hear about other players. Before Travis Hunter, I've never heard anyone talk about another college player playing both sides of the ball prolifically. So
at the D1 level.
Yeah. So the fact that he's the only one that I could think of in recent years that's being mentioned and actually performing is, like Caleb tells you, he's playing both sides of the ball. I should tell you something, but I'm gonna have to pick BYU because, it seems like they're on fire. So,
yeah, I agree there. Next up is an interesting matchup we got here. Louisville, Notre Dame, Fighting Irish, the Cardinal. It's at Notre Dame, 6.5 point favorite for the Irish in a over under a 48.5. I'm not sold. I'm taking Louisville in this one. I'm just not sold on Notre Dame.
I can't pick anyone who's lost to NIU at home. I'm sorry. I can't do it. I can't. They literally might be one of the most inconsistent teams I've ever seen in my life. They're chock full of talent, and it seems like one game you're like, God, these guys are really good. And the next game you're like, what happened? What happened to these guys in 1 week? So yeah, I agree with you. I can't pick someone that's that inconsistent.
Yeah.
So I'm taking Louisville.
And plus you've got a guy in Louisville starting quarterback in Tyler Show that has thrown for 8 touchdowns and 0 picks, takes care of the ball, makes smart decisions, 850 yards and 8 touchdowns on the season so far. They're another one of these teams that I think have been a little bit of a surprise in the ACC that could be right up there. Your normal ACC teams that normally have success, like your Clemsons, teams like that. But if you don't watch out, Louisville might quietly sneak into being one of those top teams in the ACC.
They're playing good football, so
we both taking Louisville there. Up next, well. You have the last round of this matchup in Jerry World. My Arkansas Razorbacks headed down to Dallas to take on the Texas A&M Aggies in Dallas Cowboy Stadium, a 24th ranked A&M team that I don't know how they're ranked 24th, but okay. Arkansas comes off a win on the road in Auburn, an ugly win, but a win's a win. At the end of the day, you still have that W. So, beginning of the season, I wasn't sure how I feel about this game going into this week. A&M's only favored by 3.5, over under 52.5. I see this a game that Arkansas can win. I mean, you look at passing game hasn't been there 100% on the season, but you look at what we're able to do running the ball. Our starting running back, Jaquindon Jackson, transfer from Utah, 472 yards on the season, 8 touchdowns. He's averaging 2 touchdowns a game.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the passing definitely has not been there. That's a hard game to pick, man, because
Well, I mean, even with the passing game struggling, you still have Talon that has thrown for 957 yards.
I mean, this is very true.
It's just decision making has been a little bit tough. Plus, you got to consider Texas A&M has a little bit of a quarterback carousel, if you will. Wegman's been deemed on the injury report, but he's been seen throwing on the sidelines. You've had Reed that started the past 2 games, once against Florida, and then last week against Bowling Green, where they only won by 6 against Bowling Green.
I'm going to do it for you. Give me Arkansas, but also because I don't know who it was, but I have a video that I would like to. I'm gonna have to show you, right? If you guys haven't seen, you guys go see it. But I don't know who it was, but some Arkansas receiver got absolutely lit up, dude. I don't know who it was, but
Andrew Armstrong.
That was one of the hardest hits I've ever seen anybody. I mean, this man got hit so hard, his helmet completely separated from his body and just went the opposite direction. I mean, he got absolutely pummeled. So anyone who can take a hit like that and still get back up is all right with me, because that was an absolute annihilation. So no, but Arkansas plays really well. I mean, technically they should be 4-0. I'm just saying, because they literally on a silver platter handed that game to Oklahoma State. They did. They just gave it to them and said, "We really don't want it today. You guys can have it." That's basically what it was, because they beat them in every other category of football in that game. So just based on that, I think Arkansas probably plays a little better football. I understand the passing game is a little not there, but Green, he makes some solid throws for some mistakes he makes. He does make some solid throws, and the running game is there. So give me Arkansas.
I was about to say, also in that game, if you didn't see it, you had Green semi-hurdle a guy as well. So, I mean, he's a guy that, our starting running back has 69 carries for 472 yards on the season. Our quarterback that is very much a mobile guy that gets you out of trouble with his legs so much, 59 carries on the season for 325 yards and 4 touchdowns. So he's 10 carries less than your running back, which we've talked about on my show. I don't know if that's feasible to keep up the entire season, having your, quarterback have 17, 18 carries a game, but we're having the success right now. Hopefully Bobby Petrino, some call him the quarterback whisperer, can continue to work with him. We've already seen some arm slot improvement as far as his throwing. If he can just continue to work with him, make those improvements game by game, I think this could turn out to be a better season than a lot of Arkansas fans were thinking it might be. Going into the season, we said the stretch was crucial, that we really like to win that Oklahoma State game, but you bounce back from that, you beat UAB, you go on the road, open up conference play with a win. I mean, I'm feeling pretty good. Not 100% confident, but I think this is a game that we can come in and compete with before you come into a complete insane home stretch where you have to play the likes of Tennessee, LSU, Texas, and Ole Miss. So,
yeah, I agree. I think Arkansas I mean, listen, like you said, you don't know if 17 carries is feasible a game for a QB, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So it's working right now. He's definitely a dual threat quarterback. He makes good decisions as much as he does make some poor ones, obviously, but he does make good decisions and he can use his legs, and that's a huge plus, like you said, and it's working for him. He wouldn't have over 300 yards if he wasn't able to use his legs efficiently. So, yeah, I think it's probably a really close game, but I think Arkansas squeaks this one out. I think they definitely take the win.
Yeah. Moving on, you have the Liberty Flames and the App State Mountaineers in a game in which App State got embarrassed by South Alabama, 48-14. You have a 4-0 Liberty team. It is on the road for Liberty. Boone, North Carolina for App State. Liberty favored by 3 in this game. 63.5 for the over-under. A lot of points expected to be scored in this game. Liberty's quarterback, Salter, 949 yards on the season, 7 touchdowns to 1 interception. I'm going Liberty in this one. The Flames, I think, get it done on the road. App State, a team that has struggled a little bit. They, started the season, got the win over ETSU 38-10, got smacked by Clemson 66-20, gets the win over East Carolina 21-19, and then loses to South Alabama 48-14.
Yeah, I'm taking Liberty. And never in my life am I ever going to pick the App State Mountaineers. That's never happening. That's never happening. So yeah, Liberty Flames. I'm also going to have to agree with you there.
Next up, you've got some fantastic Mountain West play. The Fresno State Bulldogs taking on the UNLV Rebels in Las Vegas. Home game for UNLV at Allegiant Stadium. UNLV 3.5-point favorite, over under 51.5. UNLV looks good this year. I love what they've been doing. Their quarterback Keen, Sluka. Not a ton of passing yards here, 318 yards, 6 touchdowns, though, 1 interception. Whereas, flip side of that, you got Fresno State, Keen, 1,000 yards on the season so far, 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I watched their game this past week where they went on the road and beat New Mexico. But to me, this UNLV team has been playing too good this season to not pick them. They beat a Houston team to open up the season 27-7. They beat UTU 72-14. And then they knock off Kansas 23-20.
Yeah, I'm going to have to take UNLV. It just seems like their offense takes more care of the ball and makes their quarterback Sluka makes a little bit more better decisions. I understand he doesn't have all the passing yards in the universe, but I'd rather have you have less passing yards and make good decisions and throw touchdowns than have 6,000 passing yards and a significant amount of interceptions. Because turnovers are everything, especially in college. It goes for any game, right? You always want some form of possession, right, as much as you possibly can. So I'm going to take the team that makes the better decisions and has the less turnovers. So give me UNLV.
I was about to say, and they make plays defensively. That's what I like about this team. Their game against Kansas, 2 interceptions in that game. Like we said, not a ton of yardage. Their quarterback, 86 yards, 1 touchdown. Their running back, 124 yards on 19 carries, 6.5 yards average. I mean, I'm like you. I think they are an efficient offense, even though they don't have the crazy yardage. They're efficient with their touches, and I think they get it done against Fresno State.
I have to agree.
We move back to SEC action as you have Oklahoma going on the road to take on the Auburn team that Arkansas just beat this past week. This Auburn team's bad.
Yeah.
It's bad. I mean, you saw last year you had a guy Peyton Thorne transferred in to Auburn before last season. Had a good year at Michigan State. Transferred over. Some good and bad last year. Came out this year, their starter, guy with experience. You bring him back, second year in the system. You expect him to, come out and have some success. Against Cal, he throws 4 interceptions and gets benched for the next game, where a redshirt freshman came out and performed well, but wasn't ready for SEC play, as that freshman quarterback that got the start was benched at halftime for the experienced Peyton Thorne to come back.
Yeah, Auburn's not good, like you said. They're not good at all. And again, I understand Oklahoma did not have a very good game against Tennessee, but they still played very well, even with a lot of turnovers. So I think, if you take the turnovers away, maybe that game gets a little more interesting. They have a decent defense. Their offense is mediocre, I would say, but they do have a lot of speed. There is a lot of talent there, and they make mistakes. But it seems like Arnold, the starting QB, if you take out this week against Tennessee, he makes the lesser mistakes of the two QBs. And again, I think that comes down to everything. But I'm going to take the team here that I feel like is more talented, is faster. It makes the less mistakes, and I'm going to say that's Oklahoma. So I'm going to take the Sooners to have the win over Auburn.
Agreed, 100%. Next up, we have North Carolina traveling, home game for Duke. Duke's favored by 2.5 in this game. We talked about in the preseason, Duke. They've got the transfer Malik Murphy from Texas. And, it's not – he went to the ACC, but he's put up 1,017 yards on the season, 11 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. So it's doing pretty well, and is, a chance to finally get the start here. Their running back, Thomas, 314 yards and 2 touchdowns on the season. As we know, North Carolina lost their starting quarterback in week 1 to a leg injury. So they have Jacoby Criswell starting last week, 638 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. A guy that was at North Carolina, transferred back home to home state school, Arkansas, where he was the backup last season. After spring ball, decided to transfer back to North Carolina, back to play for Mack Brown. What are you thinking here?
Listen, I cannot for the life pick a team that just played JMU and let 70 get dumped on them. So because they did, they literally let JMU walk in there and dump 70 points on them. And it seems that there's a lot of controversy too. The head coach from North Carolina, Brown, is that his name, Mack Brown, or
legendary coach of Texas before that?
He had some. It seemed like he had some concerning stuff come out in the locker room over the weekend. He went in the locker room and basically said he told his players that if you guys feel like you aren't getting enough from me, then tell me now, and I'll blame everything on me, and it'll be all my fault, and I'll retire right now. That's basically, not verbatim, but that's along the signs that he said. I don't really like that. You shouldn't really be putting that kind of pressure on your players. You should know yourself if you're not giving your 100% to these kids. To put on the players in my eyes isn't fair, especially when you've been coaching college football for a long time, right? That's not fair to the kids. They have enough to worry about. They just got absolutely embarrassed by JMU. All right, they just let 70 points fly over their head. So that's kind of not fair. And I don't know. I don't really know what the vibe of the locker room is or what the team chemistry is right now, but I'm going to say, just based on how he's feeling, it's probably not the greatest. So I'm going to say with everything that kind of happened, I'm going to say Duke is obviously the more talented team. They do make mistakes, but less of them. And it just seems like they're better overall. So I'm going to take Duke.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to take the Blue Devils in this one as well to get things done. Up next, could be possibly the biggest games in college football this year. Georgia taking on Alabama. Georgia team, both these teams coming off a bye week. Georgia getting the chance to come off a bye week off a game where we talked about it last week. They scraped by and managed to get the win on the road at Kentucky. Alabama that comes off a win on the road against Wisconsin, where they kind of take care of business there. Big test for Kalen DeBoer in his first season at Alabama. As you know, you wanted to come to the SEC for these big-time, prime-time matchups. Well, here you go. You are hosting the defending or two-time champion Georgia Bulldogs over the past few years. Number 2, coming into Bryant-Denny. There's a reason this is the game of the week. There could be a lot of playoff hopes in this game.
Yeah.
Georgia favored by 1.5.
Georgia favored by 1.5. Listen, I hate both teams equally. Okay. I hate both teams equally. I hated Alabama for the longest time because I absolutely cannot stand Nick Saban because it's just he's so good. And I'm tired of the same person winning all the time. And I hate Georgia because now they're like the new Alabama. All right. But guess what? Nick Saban's gone. Caleb DeBoer's there. And I hate Alabama a little less. So give me Alabama for the win. I'm taking Alabama for the win. Jalen Milroe is on fire. I want to say he's almost leading right now, leading the Heisman, right? The kid is 35 of 52, 62.3% passing completion. So you'll like to see that come up a little bit. 590 yards, averaging about 11.3 yards a play, 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And I can't find his rushing stats.
265 and 3 touchdowns.
So, I mean, the kid is phenomenal. Rushing the ball and throwing, has not made a single mistake so far, has not turned the ball over at all. And that's exactly what you need to do to beat a team like Georgia. Alabama's been playing fairly hot right now. Georgia's coming off a game where they almost lost to Kentucky. So obviously it's probably a really close game. It's probably a 1-score game. Wouldn't surprise me if it goes in overtime, 2 overtimes, 3 overtimes. Wouldn't surprise me. But I honestly think that Georgia might come into this game a little hyped up and a little feeling like, I feel like they might underestimate Alabama a little bit, right? Because Nick Saban's not there. So I think they come into this game thinking they're going to get a win, and I think Alabama takes the W. Never thought I'd do this. Never thought I'd do that, but I'm doing it.
Give me the Dogs, and I'll tell you why. I think Kirby Smart is going to have this team ready to go after a game where they absolutely looked like trash against a Kentucky team that they should have won by 20. And I think this Georgia team is going to remember December 2nd, 2023, when they lost to Alabama 27-24. I think Kirby Smart's going to have this team raring to go. We talked about it at the beginning of the season, that kind of chip on their shoulder. And, of course, if you're Kirby Smart, you don't want to let the guy that just took over Alabama that replaced Nick Saban give you a loss his first year in the SEC. It's like we said, I'm going to take Georgia until they get beat. Yes, they probably should have lost that Kentucky game. But in the end, they got the win. Both these teams coming off a bye week, both teams having a chance to prep for what could be at least, I struggle saying this, one of the biggest games on their schedules. This is one of 2 big, extremely huge games for Georgia. They have this game, and their other biggest game of the season is on the road as well in Austin against the Texas Longhorns. But I think Georgia comes in here and still establishes that they're the number 2 team for a reason. I don't think they're going to lose this. So I think this is probably the first game that we've split. And so I'm going to take the Dogs on this one. We'll see. Who knows? Maybe Kalen DeBoer can come here and get a signature win his first season as the head man of the Crimson Tide. Who knows? We'll see. But I think, like you said, it could be a very close 1-score game, potential overtime. I think this is going to be a great game to sit back and watch on Saturday.
I would agree.
rounding up week 5 picks, Boise State and Washington State. Mountain West, Pac-2. Boise State 2-1, Washington 4-0. I took Washington last week, or Washington State to beat Washington. They did. It is on the blue, as they call it, the Smurf turf in Boise, Idaho. 7.5-point Boise State, 64.5 over under here. A nice 70-degree 9 p.m. kickoff. Give me the Broncos in this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree. Give me Boise State, man. They're playing good football, you know. And Madsen, he doesn't have as many yards as Mattier, but he's made less mistakes, right? 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. And Jonty, he's right up there with the Heisman. I'm telling you, he's right up there in the Heisman talks, right? 56 carries for 586 yards, and I repeat, 9 touchdowns. 9 touchdowns. So
he is the focal point of this offense. I mean, you saw last game, they played Portland State. They won 56-14. I think it was a game that Portland State went in and kind of their game plan to shut down Jonty. In a sense, they did. He didn't score a touchdown. He still put up 127 yards on 11 carries. And Madsen, 188 yards, 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, they found another way to beat you.
And if you think about it, if they just make a small adjustment and not let a kick return get turned on them, right? You're talking this is a 3-0 Boise State team with a win over Oregon. So they are not to be taken lightly. They have 1 loss, and that loss is to a very good offensive Oregon team. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think Broncos come in here and probably I don't want to say, but they probably put a whooping on them, dude. Because these guys, they know how to score, and they literally know what offense is. So
I was about to say this. You can't forget this Bronco team. Several of the guys on game day have this Bronco team as one of the bottom half playoff teams that they have them making one of those lower spots on the 12-team playoff. And I think they do for a reason. They see what is a dark horse team in this Boise State team. I mean, that's our picks for week 5. Any other games that you want to talk about before we get out of here? There's not a ton of action going on this week. I mean, you've got Oregon taking on UCLA. UCLA's 1-2, though. Should be a win for Oregon. There's the Minnesota-Michigan that we talked about. Keep an eye on that one. I'll be interested to see the quarterback situation for Michigan. Not a ton of other action going on. You got Illinois headed to Penn State, top 12 matchup there, Big Ten conference game. Illinois could really do something. They go into Penn State, get the win here. I think they get close to top 10.
If they get a win here against Penn State, you're talking definitely top 12. I feel like. I mean, if they win this game, they definitely have a playoff spot. As of right now, they would have a playoff spot. I guarantee it. And they're hot, so don't count Illinois out because they are playing hot on both sides of the ball. Hot.
Yeah, you got Altmaier that on the season, 862 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, no interceptions. Taking care of the football.
Yeah, he's taking care of the football, and he's throwing the thing too. He's not just doing little dump passes, throwing for 100 yards a game. I mean, this man is out there throwing the rock for 300 yards a game. And not making any mistakes and throwing touchdowns, a lot of them, along with it. So, yeah, keep an eye on that game. That'll be a good game to watch.
100%. So that wraps up our Week 4 reaction, our Week 5 previews. Get ready for another good weekend of college football. Don't forget to subscribe to the Variety Sports Network, where you can catch us here every Monday recapping a great weekend of college football, all the upsets, all the great plays, all the games that are insane. We're going to be right here to talk about them every Monday after the big weekend. And until next week, have a good weekend of watching college football, and we'll see you next week.